5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Welcome back to Lessons and Blessings. It's a new year.
New year.
I'm sorry if you have headphones on. The mouth is the mouth. The mic
Started strong.
The mic
new
is practically like
say it.
a centimeter away from my mouth. So
Yeah.
I might be loud. It is what it is. But it's a new year. New things going on.
Big
Actually,
things.
not really new things going on. It's just committing to the things we said last year in the new year.
Building on top
Build
of them,
on
you might say.
crescendo. Building that foundation on that foundation. Let it build up, not tear down.
That's good.
Because the word around town is, I don't have no frown, so I'm for the heavily crown. I'm freestyling. Holla at me.
Okay.
JK, I'm just messing with y'all, but it's really good to be back with y'all in this brand new year. It's your boy Shell,
And your boy AJ.
and we're coming back to you with another episode.
Yes, sir.
Are we going to tell them what the episode's about, or are we just going to start talking about it?
Well, I mean, we're like, 5 days into the new year now?
Yeah.
Not to date this podcast or anything like that, but that's what I just did.
Shaking my head.
So, yeah, I mean, I think we were talking about it a little bit. We just had some dinner together and talking about, New Year's goals. And I feel like everybody's talking about it this time. And I get it. And maybe it's just like a function of being 25 and 26 for you. I mean, elderly home.
Okay, brother.
But,
You're
it's
literally about to
whatever.
be 26 in like 2
I
weeks.
mean, whatever, it's fine. But I think part of me, I feel like I experienced a lot of growth in this past year. And I made a joke earlier, though, like, I did a lot last year, so I'm just going to take this year off. But I think there's something to be said about, like, even maintaining a lot of growth is important and good. Mm-hmm. And we just kind of both have taken a step away from, I think, the pressure of setting goals and the pressure of sticking to them. And we'll get into it in a little bit, but a lot of it, I think, is just what it's like to be in a society that sometimes makes us feel like we're falling behind, know? And anything that I set goals for myself wise, that's just like, this huge milestone goal, and then it's at the end of the year I don't do it because it's way too big and I didn't set it up in a way that it's actually achievable, and then I'm just mad at myself,
Right.
So I don't know. I don't have many big goals this year. I think I would just like to be more consistent across a lot of different things.
I agree with you on that, because consistency is something that I think a lot of people struggle with in general. Like the truly disciplined people, like, oh yeah, I'm disciplined in this and this and this and this. It's just all discipline is just consistency. It's they're not separated. And so I was telling them earlier that I've had to admit that I don't like being consistent because I've been so inconsistent my whole life that being consistent is so different than what I'm used to. And what it really is that there's structure and there's no chaos. And I've thrived on chaos for so long, and not thriving on chaos in itself is uncomfortable and chaotic.
Yeah.
And so unlearning some of those things, I started that journey of unlearning the chaos especially when it comes to my relationship with the Lord, was not thriving on chaos and accepting the peace of God and staying in connection with Him and not self-sabotaging my way out of that. But now I'm taking it to the very practical sense of just being consistent in the things that I do, like consistent in the time I go to bed, consistent in the time that I wake up, consistent in the way I eat, consistent in the way I communicate with people in a timely manner, all these different things. And it's just another stepping stone for me to become like a more healthier man, a better man, a better friend, a better coworker, a better boss, a better all these things, because I think it's always an opportunity for us to grow.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be in the place where like uber growth. I've been that way for a long time. Like, new year, I'm about to do all these different things. Like you said,
transform.
Yeah, I'm about to turn into something a completely different animal.
Yep.
Like a new beast. But in reality, I don't have to do all that.
No.
I just gotta just do the simple things well.
Yeah.
And then the advanced things will come down the road whenever that time may be.
Yeah. I mean, I was just talking about this with a friend a couple weeks ago, but I think that our generation especially is kind of really hooked on the spectacular. and we don't really know how to deal with the day-to-day, you know, and I think that we're always kind of looking for the next big hit, you know, which is why I think a lot of us struggle with, you know, anything from porn or drugs or any of that kind of stuff. It's because you're just like, I don't know, we want the mountaintop experience so bad that we like hate anything that's not that, and we can't stand it, you know. I think that's some of the chaos too of like, I don't know, even as a Christian, you know, growing up, you read about these stories in the Bible of God doing this crazy thing, this miracle. I mean, you've got all these things, especially in the Old Testament, where God just shows up and does something, and everybody's like, you should have this kind of faith, almost in a way of saying like, if you're not experiencing these awesome, amazing things, then there's something wrong that you need to fix, or that you need more faith. And I think that the way that Christianity plays itself out is much more in the how do you handle your day-to-day than it is in the mountaintop. Because like, even at my best, I can't like make something happen. Like I can't make God do something. Right? But I think because of that, we kind of set these huge expectations for ourselves. Like, this is the year that I'm gonna be the most ripped I've ever been, or this is the year that I'm gonna get the dream job, or I'm gonna get the relationship I want to be in, or I'm gonna stop doing this thing I haven't been able to stop for, you know, whatever it is. But like, honestly, the people who are great that we try to emulate, I think, are just consistent over a long period of time.
Yeah, longevity.
That's it. You know,
playing a long game.
But I think we were just having that conversation a little bit earlier, and everybody's going to be talking about goals. I just don't really care about it as much this year, and I don't think I have for a couple years. But I think especially like, I'm actually really thankful and proud of the growth that I made last year, and kind of the way that I handled life. And I think for a lot of people it was a big year, and so I also don't want to like just jump into the next thing without just like, hey, that was good, you know. But anyway. We're going to talk about, I think, an interesting thing.
Oh, yeah. Because
I think that when you hear it, it's going to sound like that's a really dumb thing to talk about. But there's a point.
Yeah.
So, Sheldon, obviously, we're going to have to get into and explain what we're talking about. But why don't you go ahead and drop on us what we want to tackle today?
So today, we're going to be tackling the notion of we should forget that we are human. And what we mean by that is the fact that a lot of times in our Christianity, you know, you hear a lot of times, you know, you're a royal priesthood and you're in a royal family and you have this inheritance and you're just a spiritual person, which all those things are true. But a lot of times we forego the human experience, and which makes our Christianity, one, way harder than it needs to be, and two, it kind of makes us insufferable because a lot of times
you get a complex.
Yeah, we think we're better than we actually are.
Yeah.
In reality, we're not. We suck. That's why we have a savior in the first place. And so once you get to the place where I realize that you're human and you're going to still deal with the things of the flesh and have these different struggles and all these things, I think it just puts us in the right perspective to allow God to be God and take us off of that pedestal. Yeah. And so, I mean, I'm sure in your own life there have been a lot of moments where like, hey, you know what? AJ needs to chill. And there's been a lot of times in my life, Sheldon, you need to get yourself off the high horse. Who are you? Yeah. To think.
Yeah.
And I think about like the story of Job when after, you know, he lost everything, his health, his money, his family. Yep. And his friends are kind of coming and telling him like, hey, you've done all you had to have sin for these things to happen. And at the end of the story, you read one, God rebukes him, and then he answers Job as like, where were you when I formed the earth? Where were you when I split the heavens and the seas? Where were you in all these different things? That's a question we can ask ourselves when we get into these moments like, hey, where was I when all these things happened?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's a very, I think, nuanced discussion because I think on one hand, we have rightfully been told that we're a new creation, and that is true, right? Like Scripture is very clear. When you accept Jesus and you put your trust and faith in Him, something happens. And in a lot of circles, we'd call that, you know, regeneration or whatever you would say. Like you became alive instead of being dead, and also, by being in the process of being saved, a lot of the things that we wish weren't true about us anymore are still true. Yeah. Right? And that's a difficult thing. And I think when you don't actually work those things out, you actually become, I think instead of humility, I think you can run much easier into a form of Christian narcissism, which is I don't hear a lot of that thrown around. But you, in the process of thinking that like, really, we're talking about people that have been saved for a long time, you know, in a lot of ways. Because I think that when you are new to faith and you recognize for the first time what God has done for you and what Jesus has done for you, there's that, like, you just can't get over it. You know, you can't get over the fact that you're so wicked and messed up and God still chose you. And I think as you become a long-term follower of Jesus, sometimes you forget over time who you actually are. And it's one of those things, like, we're not saying that you are a horrible person. We're not saying that you need to have low self-esteem. But I think there is something to be said of, like, you are a child of God now, and also you're a human being that is flawed. And you have to figure out, and it's one of the greatest mysteries of life, but it goes to show how crazy it is that God chooses to use us and partner with us, even as we continue to be broken. So, yeah, I mean, you've been saved from the penalty of sin, but you still have to deal with the power of it in your life. And that's being worked out through sanctification. But, you know, I think that a lot of it comes down to once you start hitting these kind of big milestone moments. I've been a follower for 10 years, 5 years maybe. I don't know. You just kind of forget how much you needed God and still need him. I think there becomes this, like, weird dynamic. And I've explained it like this before, but in order for our parents to be successful parents, they have to prepare us to go live in the world without them. Right? So, like, mom and dad succeed by setting you out into the real world and you being able to figure it out on your own and be able to handle it yourself. If you still needed them the way you did when you were in high school, we would say as a society, you probably failed somewhere along the lines. I think we take that same idea into our Christian faith with our Heavenly Father, as if by maturing, we're supposed to outgrow our need for God. And what I've discovered, especially in the past couple of years, is, like, and candid. I find out all the time I'm worse than I thought I was. That's the real thing.
That's a kicker right there, man.
That's the real thing. Over time, I have found out just how much worse I think, or I am, than I thought I was. Because I remember being a young Christian and growing up in a Christian household and stuff, and I was like, I'm pretty good. Like, I do those kinds of things. And then I'm like, dude, man, the real conversation is I've been walking with the Lord for a long time, and I still suck at these things. You know, like, that's tough. But I think one of the ways we can kind of get into this and really, I think, make it applicable to us, what parts, this will be a question that both of us will try to tackle, I think, over the next however long we talk about it. But what parts of our humanity get on our nerves the most? Because, like, this is one of those things, like, even when you read about Paul, the thorn in the flesh, or all the times he's responding to these people that don't think he has the authority that he's actually been given by Christ, he is very quick to point out, like, hey, I have the authority, and also, I've messed up a lot. I'm a human. Like, he doesn't forget that, and I think we can learn from that. But for you, like, what things do you sit with yourself in your room or in the mirror, and you're like, I can't believe at 26, I'm still this human, and by that we mean flawed and broken.
Honestly, bro, it's not even just one thing. It's several things.
Of course
you just like, man, you feel like I shouldn't be having to deal with this.
Right?
I should have moved past this by now. It's funny, like, the other day, actually yesterday, I was talking with this girl I'm talking to, and some insecurities of mine showed up. So some backstory: the night before, I was cleaning out my iPad storage, right? And it was telling me, I have a lot of different large attachments in all these messages. So I'm just going through stuff, deleting stuff, and then I come across this text thread from my ex from 3 years ago. I didn't even know it was still in there.
3 years ago.
I was like, whoa, okay, let me see what's in there, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm just going through, looking at some of the messages and stuff, and I was like, oh, I see why. All the, like, voice messages and all these random things. And then I get to the part to where we're breaking up, and then that's when all the memories and stuff was coming back. And then that night before I went to bed, after I deleted it, I was like, God, have I actually moved? Like, did I heal from this?
Yeah.
Or did I just move on?
Yeah.
Right? And so I just left it at that. And so I'm laughing now thinking back at it, but I was really bothered by what I'm about to say and then so the next day, she sent me a screenshot of her conversation with this other guy. He just made this joke I didn't like. And so the whole day I was looking at it, I was just like, man, I don't like nothing
eating
not
you
seeing
up,
the screenshot.
dude.
It didn't eat me up, but it was just enough for me to keep me in like this like pessimistic mood the whole day. And it finally got to the point where I had to bring it up, and I was like, I'll be honest with you, I didn't like anything in that screenshot. And when I started to write out why I didn't like it, the spirit was like, insecurities, your insecurities. These are bringing up the insecurities. This is the exact thing that you asked for. Did I actually move on? Did I heal? And it turns out I never healed from it. I just moved on. And so for me, one of the things that I don't like is that in my humanity, I tend to move away out of sight mentality more than I am going to deal with this. I'm going to sit in the weight and the heaviness of whatever it is I'm dealing with, so I can actually be a healthier person on the road. But now that I know that I have not really healed from it, I've called it out. Okay, God, how do I actually heal from this, and how, instead of just moving on? Because if I just move on and just suppress, it's gonna come up eventually. It's gonna hurt me. It's probably gonna hurt her. It's probably gonna hurt your future kids. It's gonna hurt somebody because of the insecurity that you don't know you have until something happens that brings up that insecurity. Yeah, and that's one of the things that I sit with. That, you know, because we all have insecurities about something, right? If you don't have any insecurities, please hit our email, hit our Instagram, and let us know how and how you did it. Because we'll bring you on for a special episode. We will cook you dinner, and everything. And so that's just one of them. What about for you?
Man, I think, like I was saying earlier, I think the older you get, there's an opportunity. I don't think everybody takes it, but there's an opportunity to become more self-aware. Mm-hmm. And, you know, kind of now looking back at my childhood and things about me, and I think, you know, we expect to be like, yeah, I was different, and then you kind of see things have never stopped, you know, or you've always felt that way. I think one of the things that kind of, I can't stand about my own humanity, honestly, is that I need other people. Like, in my head, and we've talked about, you know, having avoidant personalities and kind of that detached emotional. We'll have
an episode about that. That's gonna be good.
Yeah, that'll be coming up for sure. But we've talked about a lot, like how that does. But essentially, it's like I'm trying to protect myself from getting hurt again. Mm-hmm. And the frustration is that in my brokenness, I need other people. Right. You know, and that's the thing, is even if I wasn't broken, relationship is good. And it's good for us to be a part of, but like, it makes me feel weak, and it makes me feel like I'm not enough. And that's like one of the things that I've tried to run from my whole life, is just that feeling of not being enough. And so I think, like, when it comes down to the things that eat me, when I'm looking at myself in the mirror, I feel like the need just not to be strong enough to handle certain things in my life. You know, like, you and I have also been on a journey for a while now about how to handle lust. And I think that's been a thing, like, you know, in high school when I was super addicted to pornography, you kind of look at that as a journey of just stopping porn. Right. So I'm just not going to watch it anymore. Mm-hmm. But it becomes this like giant process of getting at the root and making sure you take the whole thing out, and not just the top. Yeah,
that's the big thing right there.
So I'm 25 and still trying to take out the rest of these deep-seated roots from insecurities or from experiences or from a desire for intimacy, all that kind of stuff. That I'm like, I really thought, and if we're honest, a lot of the things that get on our mind are the things that are like, I just really thought I would have been done with this by now.
Yeah, that's a big one right now.
You know? And so I think that you kind of hit these benchmarks, so to say, or you look forward to these things, graduating high school, graduating college, getting married, whatever it is, getting the job you want. And you just kind of expect to be somebody different that shows up to that way. You know, like, well, when I have that job and when I have that wife, I'll be the kind of man I want to be. The issue is, like, you show up how you left. Like, so you got to do the work. And I think in a lot of ways, like, there are still things that scare me, you know? Like, I don't think a lot of things scare me, but there are still things that, like, if I was honest and put them out there, that was like, oh, I want to follow God. There are some things that he would ask me to do that I would be like,
I don't want to do that.
And I thought at 25, who I thought I was going to be at 16, was like, I'll do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But I doubt. You know, like, it's a lot of those things. But I think it goes back to that idea of Jesus never promised us that we would, like, outgrow our humanity.
Right.
That's why when we die, we're given a new body, right? Like, we still have to live in the brokenness of the world.
Right.
But I think a lot of this is the American twist on it as well. If we were to dig underneath at the root of a lot of it, it's something that, like, eats at us, that we think God is disappointed that we haven't made as much progress as we think we should have. Right? So when I say, hey, I'm frustrated that I'm still dealing with facets of lust in my life, that is true. And also, there's probably a deeper seated reason that I think that God eventually is going to look down on me and say, hey, dude, I've given you a long time to work through this, and I'm done with you. Now, do I know God wouldn't do that? Of course I know that. I read my Bible. You know, he stuck around people all throughout his time.
Right.
And they've all sucked. But when I get to the root of it, I just start to think, man, am I going to get abandoned because I'm broken? And I think that's where you get to some really deep-seated issues. And when you go to maybe how you're raised as a kid, when you go to experiences that wounded you as a young adult, whatever it is, I think we just have to get underneath that fact that, like, when we refuse to sit with those things, we deny our humanity in such a way that puffs us up in our own head as if we don't feel those things and think those things.
Right.
So now I'm wearing a mask. And now, like I said earlier, I might be even being pushed closer to a sort of Christian narcissism. Now I think because people expect something of me and I expect something of myself, I have to be this incredible force of a man and a Christian. And I've got to be inspiring to everybody. And I've got to have the right answer for everybody.
That persona.
And and now all of a sudden, I'm not a human. Everybody else in my life, I allowed to make mistakes.
But not you.
But not me. I have separated myself out of it. And the only thing that comes from that is the fall. You're going to set yourself up, and then you get
that hard fall,
tough. But it is. Everybody, and I think when I say Christian narcissism, understand, like, I just said this earlier in a conversation with us. I think there was a point in my life where I could have chosen that path to really, like, dig into thinking I was the stuff.
Yeah.
You know? Thankfully, I think God gave me a lot of people that helped grounded me in that situation. I had a lot of experiences that reminded me, like, oh, dude, you suck. Like, you're not the best thing ever.
Relax, brother.
You know, like, I think that I got puffed up in my own head because of the gifts God had given me. And then I think I bought the hype that a lot of people told me. And now I'm looking back and I'm like, oh, man, that poor guy is just trying to prove that he's worth something. And so he runs the opposite direction. But when it becomes Christian narcissism, this idea is almost like they don't coexist. Christianity is the belief that despite me being an enemy of God, Christ came and saved me.
Right.
And now all of a sudden I think that it was a good deal for him. Like, but look at the return on an investment. Look at what I'm like. Shut up, dude. Like, we all have to deal with that. And some of us run the self-deprecation route where we just, like, beat up on ourselves, and some of us run to the self, like, almost that, like, God complex sometimes, where you think you don't bleed the same way that everybody else does. Everybody else struggles with their sins, but not you. You're different, and you're gonna overcome and overpower, and they're weak. And bro, that is a dangerous place to be.
No, for real. Not for real, man. You said a lot of really good things in there, and I think, you know, especially like going backtrack a little bit, especially with the lusting, right? You know, you can go through these different stages of, you know, go from porn to masturbation, and now you're not watching porn anymore. Then now you're struggling with masturbation. Okay, now you're not masturbating, but now you have all these images and things from years of pretty much training your mind to think certain things, and your body responding to these things, especially when you're like, why the heck am I thinking about this right now? What caused this? And it's one of those things where, like, for me, just to get a little vulnerable, is every now and then I'll just have a wildly vivid sex dream. I'm just like, for what? I'm like, I didn't do anything to the night before. I'll even say I did my Bible reading, I prayed, got in worship and all these things, I talked with God, and I went to bed, and then what? Like, what did I do? Because in the past, that would happen after, usually, you know, you watch these videos and all these things, and your brain is replaying those images and all that stuff. So that makes sense. But when you're not in that realm, you're just like, why? Why? And the answer is, because I'm still human. there's still things in my mind. There's still residue that is being clean. I am being sanctified. I am being made pure. I am being, and all these things as time goes on, as I get closer and closer to Christ, that new things would come up and old things would die off.
Yep.
And something that I wrestle with a lot is like the idea of, okay, what is this new man? Am I supposed to be this entirely new being from the second I step, foot into Christianity? Yet like I'm new man, like he says, I'm a new creation. How the Ephesians talks about, building up the new man and accepting this, and think about Romans 12:2, where it's like, okay, be renewed by the transformation of your mind, and not being of the world but still being in the world. Like, how do I navigate all those different things? And something that I found out in myself is that it really boils down for me is humility.
Yes.
Because if I don't have the humility to even recognize that I will still go through things, and two, God is still bigger than the things that I go through, then the third option is that pride is going to come in, distort everything, and it's going to keep me further down. It's going to push me further down than I ever thought I ever was. Yeah. And when I look back up, I'm like, how the heck did I get down here? Yep. How did I get so low? How did I get so far? But the beauty in that is God's like, hey, I still got you. Don't worry about it. Hey, just trust me. I got you. Yeah. And something else that's really just like, I just want to hit myself sometimes. I was like, bro, why do I do this? It's more or less, why don't I do this? Sure. It's just, when I know there's something I need to do, my brain automatically says, don't do it. Yeah. Don't do it. Don't do it. Hey, you should get up early and go work out. I'm not doing that. Hey, you should go to bed tonight. I'm not doing that. Oh. It's even if, say, I'm up reading the Bible. Why am I up reading the Bible at 2 a.m.? Yeah. Although I'm putting in time with God, is that wise?
I'm running away from something else.
Like, I have work tomorrow at 7 a.m. Why I'm up at 2 a.m. reading my Bible? Yeah. It's different when God calls you out of sleep or he's calling you into deeper. That's different. Yeah. I think those are very rare occasions.
When he asks for sacrifice.
When he asks for that, right. But what happens when I'm just choosing to make my life harder?
Yeah, I'm hiding from my responsibilities and I'm putting God's name on it.
I'm a slap. Oh, yeah. Why are you so tired? Man, last night was crazy, bro. Me and God was going through the word, man. He gave me some wisdom, bro. He gave me a word and a half, bro. He's spitting that fire, but I'm dog tired
but you
today.
You're late to work.
Right. It's literally like, you're late to work, you're irritable, you're hungry, you didn't get time to eat, you left some things you needed at home. Yep. Do you think God wants that life for you? Like I keep going back to Hosea 6:6, where it says, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, and knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. That keeps being replayed in my mind. I'm just, it's not a foreign concept, but it's something that really rocked me. I was like, whoa, this goes against everything that I was taught. Yeah. This goes against everything that I had learned up until this point. Yeah. Where, okay, God, where in my life do I need to let go and just let you show me mercy? And so how I see that is, yes, I am going to mess up, but I'm not trying to mess up. And when I do mess up, I have the space to grow. Yeah. Nothing like, it's like being in a job where you're always walking on eggshells because you're afraid that your boss, that you feel like it's over your shoulder all the time. The second you mess up, you're done. Yeah. Or they're going to ridicule you. God's not like that. Yeah. Right? He knows our propensity to fall, and he's already accounted for that. 1, by the blood of Jesus. Right. 2, he's given us the Holy Spirit. 3, he's given us community. Yeah. And so we have all these different levels of trust that we can have that can build on top of each other that can really keep us and move us to the place where we need to be. And so for me, I'm just thinking, man, like, I know there are things I know I need to do to be successful. Sure. Right? If I want to have success, if you look at anybody's success, you know what they're going to tell you? I was on a set schedule. I got up at the same time, I went to bed at the same time, and I made sacrifices when I needed to. Yeah. But I also made time, obviously, for the people and family and all these different things. So, because they're still human, like, I'm not what I do. I don't want to be what I do. And so, it's just those things like, hey, man, it's time for you to stop playing childish games and essentially just grow up. Yeah. Like, you're 26. It's time to grow up. Like, you can't just be out here willy-nilly and just accept that, one day I might get to where I want to be. It don't work like that. It's not gonna magically fall off the sky. Yeah. Like Dumbo. It's not gonna just float it to me. I have to, like you said in the beginning, you gotta put in the work. Yeah. And when push comes to shove, a lot of times I just don't want to put in the work.
Yeah. I think it's even what we would probably say societally for our generation, where there should be humility and a willingness to work hard at the things that we should. Because, those things are packaged to us that way. Like, you got to work hard for your dreams. You got to chase them. And the American dream, right? Like, that's what we say we believe. But I think our generation specifically can fall into one of the opposites of humility. It is a form of pride, but entitlement. That I'm entitled to the success I feel like I can do without the work that I'm putting into it. But I think humility really is the secret sauce in a lot of what we're talking about here. I think there are two things that are really true about our experience, no matter who you are and no matter where you get to in life, whether you live up to all the potential you think you have or you accomplish none of it. Like, the greatest person you know in your entire life, to think the person that you wake up and be like, I want to be like that, they are profoundly broken. And the best version of you is still profoundly broken. And you're never going to get away from that. This is, I think I mentioned it on a pod a couple episodes ago, but in studying some of the differences between the way that the Western world views Scripture and the way that the Eastern world views Scripture, this was like a really defining characteristic of how they deal with it. For sin, for us in the West, sin is like this piece of me that I need to try to get out. Like, that part of me that wants to watch porn, I need to go through, whatever it is. I need to go through a 12-step program. I need to have accountability because I want to get that part of me out and remove it from me, as if it's not actually me. It's like some alien thing that's inside of me that's trying to get control. And so I need to get rid of it. Like a parasite. Really, like a parasite. Where the Eastern person would say, sin is not something that's inside of you that you need to get out. It's an action you can do. So when I think about, like, it being, I just have a bend. No matter who I become, I'm still able to sin. As righteous or as pure or whatever
one decision
goal
away
I make, I will always have the ability to make a sinful action or choice. And that's not because there's a part of me that didn't heal and I didn't get it out of me. Right? Because I think sometimes we think about, and the way that we talk to our high schoolers about this, specifically in student ministry and things like this, is just like, hey, we want you to be set free from these things, which in our head means you never do it again.
There's an element to that.
I understand that, and I get that, and I think it's valuable to tell high schoolers, like, you can have freedom from the things that oppress you. And I'd sign off on some of that. But there is that element where it's like we're telling students, and it's like we're being told that, like, God's goal for you is that you never sin again the same ways that you used to. And that's how he gauges success in your life or not. And it's like, no, actually, like, the transformation that happens in your life as a result of walking alongside God has more to do with who you're becoming than just not doing bad things anymore.
That's it.
Right? Like, it's this idea, like, no. God's desire is for you to become more like Jesus, which, yes, of course, if you want to argue about semantics, that means not sinning.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. But, like, the essence of Jesus was not sinning. The essence of Jesus was being loving and selfless and all those kinds of things.
And all those things,
And so, like, in the process, we have to remind ourselves that, like, God, his heart breaks for us when we choose sin because it demonstrates that we have a lack of trust in him somewhere to provide for our needs. And so we take it in our own, or we're trying to cope with something. And so God laments our brokenness. It hurts his heart, but it's not shocking to him. He's not disappointed in the same way that your mom and dad are disappointed when they find out something, right? Like, God knew what he was getting when he purchased you. He knew you were profoundly broken. That's why it happened. That's why the transaction happened in the first place. I mean, I think when we talk about humility, especially, one of the things my brain immediately goes to is the Latin phrase memento mori, which a lot of times these high commanding officers, right? These generals, whoever it was, and you can think about all of these. It's funny enough, we had this question earlier about, like, how great do you think Alexander the Great really was? When you get these, like, epic people that we tell stories about. One of the things, especially I believe, is in Rome, is that these kind of war heroes would have these reminders around them. Is a phrase that they use that translates to remember you must die. And essentially what the meaning of that is no matter what heights you scale, no matter who you become in the eyes of the public, no matter what things you succeed at, like if you become the guy to conquer your enemy, psychologically, the way that people treat you, like something's going to happen up there. You're going to start believing your own hype, so to say. The phrase is, no matter what height you get to, you're still a human being and you're going to die like the rest of us.
Right.
And so when I first saw that, I thought a lot of times the people that wear like those little skull rings were just like Spencer workers or like Hot Topic workers. Yeah. My brother had a lot of schools and stuff, and I was like whatever, you're weird. But I immediately was like, I need to go get a ring. Yeah. And you think like a lot of these philosophers and stuff, when we talk about them at a desk or at their work, or these people that we really look up to in their minds and how they think about things, a lot of them are pictured with like a skull on a desk or a skull nearby, which is, it's that idea. Like having things in our life that look us in the eyes and say, you're a human being. You're just like the rest of us. This is why I think that you have these celebrities that kind of get so big, and you see the difference between people that like they were allowed to be broken individuals, and a lot of times you see maybe friends that they grew up with, still their friends, and you're like, you might call him so and so, but like I got a nickname for him and he's an idiot sometimes, right. Like you have that humility aspect to it. I think in one of those ways, I think in a more applicable way, like I might get off the stage after giving a message and preaching a message, and I think in a lot of circles when people haven't heard me, there's some level of they want to tell me that I did a great job, or there's some level of admiration, or some level of they're impressed, right? Especially if they don't think I can do something like that. But you guys know me, and you don't believe the hype of that one moment, right? It's not that you guys are like, no, he sucks at preaching messages, but in the same breath that you can say, hey, that was a great message, you can also say, hey, you're being an idiot right now. Right? Like, you ain't all that. Like, the moment I got off that stage and I was like, if I ever was like, guys, I think, I need to be doing this more often, and I deserve this, and look at what everybody thinks I'm the greatest, I should, whatever.
But hey, relax.
The moment I said something like that, I've got at least 3 guys that it would immediately be like, you're tripping. Like, okay, you're done for a while. Let's unpack that and sit with that for a little bit. So a lot of it, I think, is about having people that allow you to be human, and also they'll call it out, right? Because the moment I started tripping like that, my wife, bruh, if you don't get back in here and help around the house, change out our bunny's litter box, like those things, no matter who I become outside in the public world, I still have to come back, and before my wife, before my friends, before God, most importantly, I still am a human being that does not have control over all their urges, and I'm not able to do all the things that I want to. But I think it's just coming back to that idea of we have to have this rhythm almost in our life of being like even if this podcast were to blow up one day, bro, you and I are some of the most normal people out there. There's nothing about us
that's extravagant.
It's just, you would never find that anywhere. A lot of people that know us would be like, dude, I could get a mic and talk with them.
For real, they really could.
You could.
And they're going to have some people on here that's going to get on the mic and talk with us.
But it's that memento mori. Hey, you are made of the same things that the rest of us are, and it's going to be proven because no matter how great your death was, or how great your life was, your death is going to be like everybody else's.
You're still going to be in the ground.
You end up in the ground, buddy.
You can be in a prettier casket. You can be in the tomb.
Yep.
You can be somewhere else, but guess what? We all got bones. We all got flesh. We're all going to rot. It is what it is.
You're dust, bro.
We're dust. Nothing. And like that's the thing. Like that constant, like you said, that rhythm of humility. I used to say this a lot. Back when I was in college, I would say, hey, there's only two things that God's gonna do. He's gonna allow you to humble yourself, or He's gonna humble you.
Right.
And I guarantee you are gonna want to humble yourself before He has to humble you. Because a lot of times when He has to humble you, it's usually public.
It's public.
It's usually public.
Yep.
It's not
absolutely.
It's not only private. Sometimes it's probably like, oh my bad, I shouldn't have done that. But like, hey, He gives you opportunity. Hey, you might want to check yourself. hey, want to check yourself?
It will eventually become
Hey, bro,
public.
you're about to wreck yourself.
Yep.
No, I'm gonna stop you. I'm gonna help you out. You're like,
Yep.
like you said, it's so painful, but it's so needed because I mean, thinking about just the human condition as a whole, like we by nature we want to be our own gods.
Yep.
And because of that, we need to constantly have a rhythm of humility in our life, either through self-awareness, which you mentioned earlier,
Yep.
through community, people that can look from the outside, looking in and say, hey, I love you, but you wilding right now, you need to take a step back.
Yep.
And the third piece is like you having such a good relationship with God. So I think God's like, hey, you've been doing this well, but hey, in this area right here, submit this to me.
Yep.
Let me have that. Like don't try to take it away from me, because if I give it to you, you know what you're gonna do with it. Let's look at your track record. You're gonna mess it up.
Yep.
And you know you're gonna mess it up, and then you're gonna be mad that you messed it up. And so how about we do the easy thing? Let's do it together.
I'm giving you a chance here.
Yeah, let's do it together.
You would prefer this. Trust me.
You would. You would love the help.
Yep.
Trust me, you would love the help, and you take the help.
Yep.
And so, man, I mean,
I think it sounds wild, I think maybe to some of the listeners, to think like you could get to such, especially to newer Christians, I think as well, that you could get to a place where your own sense of self is so inflated and your ego becomes so big, even though the crux of Christianity is that you messed it up, right? And so you needed somebody to come help, but it happens. And I think, there can be people that are like, well, why would you, everything that I have is from God anyway, so how could I ever use those things to like try to make myself my own God? And do you really, like, do we think that Satan thought that he was going to win?
yes, he did.
Well, the thing is, right, anytime we see, and obviously, where you put the fall of Satan in the timeline is one thing or another. Every time Jesus rolls up on a demon in the New Testament, they're like hitting the panic button.
They're like, oh gosh, it's him.
Jesus walks up, this dude's got demons in him, and they're like,
why are you here?
oh, look, it's the appointed Son of God. Have you come here? Some of the translations, have you come here to destroy us before the appointed time? Right? There has never been an interaction where Jesus rolls up, where there's a demon, and they're like, I think we could take him.
Yeah.
They're like, no
nope,
fair.
fair.
You're not supposed to do this yet.
Yeah.
They know they're going to lose. But, like, that same temptation, it's easy for us to be like, oh, I would never do that. I would never start to believe my own hype that much and blah, 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 blah. Dude, Satan was who he was because God made him, and he was given everything he had. It was all from God. And one day, he used all the things that God gave him to try to overthrow him.
Like, how you
And
gonna
then
use,
what did he do immediately? He got Adam and Eve to try to do the same thing. So, like, one of the best boundaries and guardrails you can set up is by never being the guy to be like, I would never do that.
Oh, yeah.
I would never. No, you know what? Some people could do that, and they get a little bit inflated egos, but like, I would never do that. You know what that tells me? You are precisely the kind of person that would do that thing. Like, the moment that I'm like, oh no, some people don't like treat their wives the best, and they're not attentive to needs, but I would never do that. The minute I say something like that, I feel like I have to be on guard, because I might find out really soon I am the guy that would do that. And I'm not saying I'm a bad husband, but I'm saying people who speak that rashly and boldly about those things usually don't have the self-awareness to be able to see it when it starts anyway.
Yeah.
And so you're gonna find out when you become the person. You played yourself.
You're right. I remember there was one time, I remember this was vividly, as soon as you said that, a few of my genuine, I'm never doing this again moments. I think it was in 2021, and I was still struggling with pornography at the time. I was talking to my friends. I was like, bro, like, I think I hit the stride, bro. Like, I genuinely think I will never look at it again. Boy, that same week. That same week, I was like, but I just said I would never do it.
Bro, there have been that same day moments.
Yeah.
Hours later.
Peter! God, I will never deny you.
I'll die with you if I have to.
And Jesus was like, Cat,
shut up,
boy. 3 times that root
Hold this 3. Steph Curry, bro.
Yeah, and he's like, you're gonna deny me. Peter's like, nah, I'll follow to the end. Guess what happens? Hey, you was with Jesus. What? I don't know who that is. Hold on. You were with Jesus. I promise you, I don't know who that is. Third person. Oh, you talk like him. You sound like him. I promise you, I have no association with that man. What? All of a sudden, you remember? What I got? I said I never.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to find the Bible verse where it says, this right when you boast, that's when you're you're prone to fall
You're
there.
primed.
And it's like, if you're going to boast, times and time again, it says boast in the Lord,
Right.
boast in Christ. Like, we have nothing to boast about.
Yeah. You know what it shows me, though, with Peter?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this gives humility. I think if you actually believe this and you sat with this, you are more broken than you think you are. Like even at your worst, whatever you think, whenever you picture like the worst version of yourself. Like I said, I'm not saying these things so that those of us that struggle with like self-confidence and self-acceptance can go home and be like, he's right. Like I do suck. Mm-hmm. I'm saying this because there's a very real connection with those of us that are able to look our brokenness in the eyes, and those of us who are able to experience what God really did for us on the cross.
Right.
It becomes so much realer when you're able to look at like, dude, I'm more messed up than I thought I was, and God loved me anyway. There's a power and freedom that comes through that. But a lot of what that's saying, though, is that the way that I really read that story is this refining process that we hear about throughout all of Scripture, right? God being the great refiner and getting impurities. And like when we refine metal, those impurities that were inside come to the surface after the heat gets hot enough.
Right.
So Peter's like, I don't think Peter thinks he's lying.
He genuinely felt that.
He's like, that's not in my character to do that. Mm-hmm. I would bet money that I don't do that. Mm-hmm. So Jesus uses this opportunity to show Peter that I see things in you that you don't even know are there. Yeah. And I'm going to get them out of you. Mm-hmm. Right? Not in the way that I was talking about sin getting out of us, but like those are those thought processes, the way we think. Mm-hmm. You're more broken than you think you are, which means God's love is greater for you than you thought it was. And you have to be able to look and be like, dude, at 25 years old, I'm still surprised when I have new things come up that I'm like, I didn't think I struggled with that. Mm-hmm. Oh, but I guess that is hard for me, or this made it difficult for me. So there comes a humility of like, God, I think I'm doing good, but I don't even have the whole picture. Like, there still might be things in me that we're not going to even breach until I'm 30, 35. God's never done working, but I've had to eat my humble pie enough times that I'm like, and I'm going to have to eat it again. But I've had it enough where I'm like, man, I'm going to stop talking like I see everything and like I know the whole picture, because I don't. Mm-hmm. I have been embarrassed enough times to be like, dude, I didn't even know that was there. If I knew it was there, I wouldn't have said that.
Fact. And so just to kind of wrap everything up, I really want y'all to kind of take, we kind of went on a different road to get here, but I really want y'all to take 2 Corinthians 12 verses 1 through 10. Is where Paul has a vision. He's talking about the thorn in his flesh, and you'll see the rhetoric in that. He's constantly talking about boasting and not boasting in the things that he can do, but boasting in his weakness. And this banger of a line where when he's talking about the thorn in his flesh, around verse 8, he says, 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away, and each time the Lord, he said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. Yep. And so whatever that weakness is in your life, right? Don't think we're saying that, hey, you're a weak person. That's not what we're saying. Right. In the grand scheme of things, yes, we are weak because we need the help. We need a savior. So in that sense, we are weak. But I will say, if you know what your weakness is and you choose not to do anything with it, then that's when you become weak. Yeah. Like as we look at the words of Jesus, right? This is red letters. Everything else is white. This is red. My grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So hey. Yep. He's calling your weakness out. He's inviting you closer to him so he can work these things out of you and work something into you, right? Like you're saying, that imagery of like, I'm not trying to get this sin out of me. I'm really trying to get something else better in me. Yep. And so when the things of the Spirit are in me and I'm pulling, and God is like, download these things into me, and I'm learning all these things, and through trial, through wisdom, and all these different avenues, the way that God builds us up, the sin in me has no room to live if I'm full of the Spirit. Yeah. If I'm full of the things of God. If I'm accepting his grace for me, if I'm accepting his mercy for me, if I'm accepting his love for me, and not trying to do these things on my own. And so take this, please. Like, go read it. That's good. Go read it for yourself. Read it for yourself and wrestle with this with God. Say, God, where in my life am I not allowing your grace to be sufficient? Yeah.
And I think a final word for maybe some of our friends that really struggle with self-confidence and maybe beating themselves up too much. I think that's the other extreme we have to avoid. What that verse tells me is that I can be weak. I can be weaker than I know. And I am still more valuable to God than I could ever know.
Right.
Because I think a lot of times we start doing, oh, but I'm unworthy. And like, yeah, of the gift you were given, sure, of course. But that's not where the conversation ends. Because God chooses to value you. He says you have innate value. You bear his image, like when it's talking about Adam and his son, I can't remember. I think it's for Seth. It might be for Abel, but I think it's for Seth. But it talks about Adam and Eve having these kids, and the way that the language talks about and it was made in their image, like in the image of Adam, his son was. It's this very poetic and beautiful language, and then you backtrack, and that's how God looks at us when he put his image in us. Like, you reflect God. That doesn't mean you're perfect like him, right? You're not God. But just because you're weak, that has no bearing on you being valuable to God.
That does not change your value. Absolutely.
So you have to hold those two things in tension. And I think, like we said earlier in the pod, it should actually inform you more on just how radical God's love is for you in the first place. So don't take that and just use it as fuel. Don't let the enemy use that as fuel this week to be like, see, you suck and you're worse. And there are things that you don't even know about yourself that make you worse. The point of the message is you are profoundly broken and you have profoundly more value than you think you do to God. I think that's it, man.
And I think that's a perfect way to end it. And so this has been Lessons and Blessings. Y'all win the day. Stay wholesome. Be blessed. Peace.